Good morning to all. Usually I say good morning everyone, but I'm trying to change it up a little bit. September 24th, 2023. Welcome to everybody joining us here. Welcome to everybody joining us on YouTube. If you believe that Christ forgave all sins, when he died on the cross, and now you don't have to ask for forgiveness anymore. They've all been forgiven. If you believe that, then you believe the same as we believe. And so thank you for joining us. Today we are Gospel of God Ministries. We are in the core series, studying the timeline again. We'll do the timeline 2 more, I believe, Sundays, Bible studies, and then we'll get back into Ephesians and try and finish out Ephesians. But today we're going to be studying about the BC events. So whatever happened before Christ. And then next week we're going to do the during Christ. There's no abbreviation for that. And then the Anno Domini, the after his death. Okay? So let's begin with a little review of last week. We did the By Which Gospel Are You Saved? If you didn't watch it last week of the 17th of September, please go back and watch that one if I ever get it posted to the internet. So we'll get them both posted today, and my apologies for lacking on getting that one from last week. But anyway, by which gospel are you saved? A gospel are the terms and the conditions by which you can receive salvation, right? It is just a salvation message, and this says this is what you have to do, and this is what you don't do, or this is what you don't have to do at all. You are saved by the gospel of God. Each and every one of you are either saved by the gospel of God, or you are not saved. Okay? A verse that proves our salvation is in the book of Ephesians. Ephesians 2:8 and verse 9. For by grace are ye saved through faith, and that not of yourselves, it is a gift of God, not of works, lest any man should boast. I encourage all of you, please memorize that verse. We know our kids' birthdays. We know our yield that we got last year if we're farmers. We remember the first time we got that promotion. We remember all these things. Let's just try and remember those 2 verses if we can put those to memory. But you are not saved by the kingdom gospel and the gospel of Christ. They also offer salvation in the New Testament. But it's not yours, and you're not saved by it. It's faith plus works offered to Jews and Gentiles who have converted over to Jews. And it's not offered to all. And we are not saved by those gospels or the verses in those books where the gospel of Christ and the gospel of God, of the kingdom are being taught. Our faith only, eternal salvation is sealed. We didn't earn it. We can't lose it. Okay? Not of works, lest any man should boast. So today, we're going to spend a fair amount of time going back and forth to the timeline. But we're going to talk about this section here. Okay? Where 4004 BC until, we won't even get to 4 BC, but everything that happened before Christ. So we're not talking about anything over there, only here, right? And the years are up on top, and then the years are also on the bottom. But I'm going to tell you, speaking of your kids' birthdays and your everything else like that, I'm going to give you about 20 verses today, and overall, or not 20 verses, I'm going to give you 20 dates, 20 years. If you can remember the year you graduated high school, and possibly college, and possibly welding shop, and possibly all these other kind of things, could you maybe memorize 20 years? Not dates, just years. Because if you can, I promise you will look every bit, if not more intelligent than I am in any discussion, because you'll hear me throw all these dates all the time. And what we're talking about today is 20 years, different years, But you remember those in order, and you will start to feel the Bible get a little bit more easily to understand, at least from a time standpoint. Okay? And we're going to cover everything. We're going to cover the 4,000 years before Christ, and there's only 2,000 after, right? And so we're going to cover those. But if you can lock into this and take this home and study these dates and get these in order, it certainly changed my outlook. Okay, so let's go. The BC events. And if you have a question, obviously, if you have a question online, just text us or email us or put a comment there. But stop us and this is not intended to be in depth. This is intended to give us timeline overview. Okay? So, Genesis 1, the beginning. Things were created, made, and formed. We're not going to go to the verses. They're provided there for you. But in 4004 BC, okay, everything was created and made. Still things being formed. Heaven and earth, both spiritual and physical, were created in an instant. Then, heaven and earth were made in 6 days, and then man was the first thing formed after that. Okay? 4004. How about 2500? The Pyramid of Giza. Enoch's pillar. Now, if you look at these first two, they're just in reference, but Isaiah 19 is really what it's talking about. Enoch's pillar, the Pyramid of Giza. 2500 BC. 1,500 years. I'm not going to give you anything to remember. But remember 2,500 pyramids. Okay? And just specifically Pyramid of Giza. Okay? You can look on pillarofenoch.com, many other websites and books for information. But that's very widely, commonly accepted. That's when the Pyramid of Giza was. Okay? Noah and the flood. Genesis 6 through 8. 2348 it began, 2346 it was done. Okay? No kings or kingdoms before the flood. Right? So we've gotten 4004, we've gotten 2348. We are up to the flood on our timeline. Next one. Peleg. This is a big deal, and you guys have all heard me talk about it. But on YouTube, if somebody hasn't talked to you about Peleg or Phalek in the New Testament, when he was born and when he lived, they're doing you a great disservice, because during the time of Peleg living for 239 years, the earth was divided. Okay. So we can come back to that. We can go more in depth in that, but that it talks about that in Genesis 10:25, and then also I think in First Chronicles. Anyway, so 2247. So we were just at 2348, right? So 2348. So we moved another 100 years past the flood, right? Genesis 5, Nimrod's kingdom. So now we've got another 50 years after Peleg was born, we have the very first kingdom. Very first king, very first kingdom. Very first person who says, I have dominion over you. I am the king. First name, any derivative of any king, kingdoms. Nimrod was Noah's great grandson. There was Noah, then Ham, then Cush, then Nimrod. Okay? Great-grandson of Noah. Approximately, 150 years after the flood. Ham, so there was Shem, Ham, and Japheth, right, of Noah's three. Ham was the lowliest of Noah's sons, yet Nimrod, this guy, claims to be the king, even though he was of the lowliest sons. Curious, right? The beginning of Nimrod's kingdom was at Babel. Okay, you've heard of the Tower of Babel. Tower of Babel, where we still had one language, one tongue across the whole earth. Don't let anybody tell you at the time of the pyramid of the Giza pyramid that there were multiple nationalities or multiple tongues being spoken. There wasn't. That was before, right? We know that was about 2,500. Well, this is at 2,100 and we still have one language, one tongue, right? Tower of Babel. Then everything was separated. So everybody was together here at the Tower of Babel. Everybody had the same language, right? Then the Lord confounded, or he disordered their language and their words. The first kingdom of man, not of God, known for the greatest confusion. So when we tried to put order to it and kingdoms to it, it became the most confused, right? Nimrod's kingdom and all the people were then scattered after the Tower of Babel. So when was Peleg born? 2247. We'll show when he died down here later at the bottom of the screen. But at some point in time, the earth was scattered, the land. Okay. Anyway, we'll get back to that. Abraham was promised a land in Genesis. So Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, right? 2067 when he was promised that in Genesis 17. Abram was from the line of Shem, Noah's oldest, not from Ham, Noah's youngest, like this. So this would be a cousin. Canaan, Ham's descendant, Sir Shem. These are just for notes. Japheth was an elder and dwelt in the tents of Shem. We come from the line of Japheth, okay? Most white people, for what it's worth. Shem had the birthright and the favor. So this is where Shem was not of Abraham and is not of Nimrod. Anyway, Peleg died in the year 2008. So between 2247 when he was born and 2008, the earth was divided. I'm going to tell you that I think science didn't ask my opinion of this, but I'm going to say science, if you just simply look in these 33 years from the time that the language was confounded and he scattered them across all the land, all the earth, between that date and this date when he promised the land was finally set up. The land in the rivers over there, Euphrates and everything else like that there are issues or questions about in the Garden of Eden. It talks about different rivers, and they said, oh, well, one river is missing. Well, of course it's missing, or it's changed, because the world hadn't stopped shifting until here, right? And so, of course, geography would have changed, because this is when it was finalized. This is when the nation of Israel was told, in this many distances, not measured in feet, obviously, like we have here, but in this many distances and this many distances, this is going to be the nation of Israel, okay? But the earth hadn't stopped shifting, I'd say, until this time. So I think it shifted between 2100 and 2067 where the earth was divided. Okay, like I say in 1 Chronicles 1:19 and in Genesis 10:25. Okay, we kind of dwell on that. But I think these dates are important to understand from a historical and from a scientific standpoint. I believe this is when the earth was divided, specifically in these 33 years. Okay. All right, Peleg died. So now we're about 2,000 years before Christ, right? So now we've gone from here to about here. We still haven't gotten very far, right? But we have a Jewish nation. We have a Gentile nation that's been announced. We have Abraham, but he's the only one we've really talked about. When nation, a people, the circumcision is promised, but the land has not yet been. They haven't moved in. They haven't gotten to the land. They're promised the land, right? Abraham. Is this helping, by the way? Is this good? Okay. All right. Number, let's see, 1906. So we were at 2008 there with Peleg. Now we're at 1906, where Abraham's grandson, Jacob, so he's the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, right? Jacob gets renamed. He gets renamed to Israel. So from here on out, we're not really going to talk about a dude named Jacob. We're going to talk about a dude named Israel. And now we think of Israel as a nation. Well, it is. But yet it is referring to the person, to the leader, right? Genesis 32, all right, 1906. The 12 tribes of Israel are named, and Jacob, the father of the nation, of the 12 tribes, dies, 1859. Moses is born, 1525. Well, now, I kind of thought those were combined together. No, it's a few hundred years between them, 300 years, right? So we have the 12 tribes named, but the 12 tribes aren't going anywhere yet. They haven't even gone into Egypt yet, right? But now they are in the 1525 when Moses is born, and we got, the reeds and floating down the river and everything else like that we all understand from the movie The Ten Commandments. Moses delivers Israel out of Egypt, not sure why that's capitalized, receives 10 commandments and the law in Exodus. 1446, big date to remember, the law, 10 commandments. The Mosaic Moses, right? We had Abraham, Abrahamic covenant. Now we have Moses, another big prophecy thing here with Moses, right? 1446. The giants are seen in Canaan. Well, now why would I bring that up? History doesn't explain them. The Bible does. In the promised land, a land that was promised to Israel, giants are seen in that area in 1445. Moses dies, Deuteronomy 34. Israel crosses Jordan into the promised land. Now, when I say Israel, I'm talking about Jacob's 12 sons, right? So Israel, right? The crosses Jordan into the promised land in 1406. So they're finally in 1406 where the nation of Israel resides. Wow, it seemed like they were there for a lot longer than that, right? Just 1400 years before Christ, that they actually lived in the place where they are going to claim for all history, all time. The land where Moses had cast out giants is conquered by Israel, 1399. I'm a little bit fascinated with giants, but I think we need to realize that there were giants after the flood, very clearly. Okay, so now we're down to 1399. We went from 1900 to 1400. Okay, so we're still right in here. But you can see now the law is there, the land is there, we have a people, we had the circumcision, but now we're Abraham, now we're to Moses, right? Let's keep going. 1043, Saul, anointed king of Israel. Anointed king of Israel. This is the first king of Israel. Israel, for the first 1,000 years, right, from 2067, round numbers, did not have a king. Now they finally have a king named Saul. Huge dude. Probably a giant. Okay? Huge dude. Then we have David and Goliath. 1024. David, just a shepherd boy, kills Goliath. Then David is anointed the second king of Israel, but only over Judah. A small place, Judah, kind of the south, more of what is currently Israel today, but kind of right in the heart of Israel, what Israel really is from the 12 tribes standpoint. But David, the year 1000, remember that 1000-ish, 1010 to be exact, but and none of these are definitely exact, but they're relatively right, maybe a year or two off. Then David became king over all of Israel in 1003 BC. If we just remember, David 1000, right? The Davidic covenant. Where is Christ going to come back in the 1,000-year kingdom and set up his kingdom and his throne? On David's right, on David's throne in Jerusalem. So the Davidic covenant. The fall of Jerusalem, 586. We haven't talked about a lot about this because, again, it's all focusing on the Jewish law, the Jewish rights, the Jewish everything else like that. But Jerusalem fell in 586. So they only had it from the time they got a king to the time it fell. They only had it for 500 years, and then they lost the headquarters. Right? Daniel in the lion's den, when they see 4 in the furnace, and really there were only 3 men in there, but they knew that the 4th one was God the Son. The temple is restored in 515, so it took them about 70 years to get back and to take back over Jerusalem. Rome becomes a republic in 5. Well, I didn't know that was intertwined. Well, of course it's intertwined. When did Rome happen? About 509 BC. My wife asked me today, when do I think of Rome? This was the time that I thought of Rome. Completion of Jerusalem's wall. Jerusalem had numerous walls, but as far as the main wall that would then protect them in 444 and really stand until Christ and through Christ's life, and then that fell again in around 70 AD. And then the Old Testament books are completed around 430. Okay? So 430 years before Christ, all the Genesis to Malachi was done, final. No word from God for 400-ish years. Written word, that is. Okay? So, started out 4004. We ended up about here. But there's really nothing of major consequence because God was not communicating through Scripture for about the last 400 years of this. Right? So we went through Abraham, Moses, David, Jesus, then Christ. Right? It's a good thing to differentiate those two. Those two are separated by 30 years for a reason. Jesus and Christ are not together. He was not Christ till he died on the cross, right? So, Bible timeline summary of BC events. If there's a chance you over the next month can just hone in on those dates and get those settled in your mind. Some of them don't even necessarily matter. It doesn't really matter when Abraham's grandson Jacob is renamed Israel. So you can toss that one out because you know that it was around that time period. You know, Abraham was promised the land. Just remember that one. You're gonna know you as a grandson about 100 years later. But the kingdoms, the flood, right? You can back all those up. If you can just get those solid in your brain, I promise this book becomes so much, not smaller, but more consumable, more, yeah. Boy, that's going to be the shortest video ever, unless we have discussion. Now, we don't need to have discussion. Let's just focus on those things. But take these home and watch the video again. And the handouts are really going to be, all these handouts are going to be available as soon as I get the information to Sonia so she can post it. But we'll have all that online. So now, I can't create these. I can't find these without, if nothing else, go on to Bible Hub, the timeline, BibleHub.com. They've got like 8 pages that consumes the BC dates. I've just thrown out many of them that I think are very timely for us from a earthly and heavenly perspective. So we understand that 4,000 years of order. Okay? Any questions? No? Well, great. that is the end. Thanks for joining us.